Welcome to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. This is the European Football Show. I'm Patrick Mullen, joined once again by Blair Malloy as we've made it to the final of the Champions League. Blair, it's been another spectacular year of football.
Yep, it's been a long road, Patrick, but we've finally made it here. Just one change of host midway through, but we've eventually got to the final here, and what a final it looks to be.
I cannot wait. Wembley Stadium, Borussia Dortmund, Real Madrid. Let's get straight into it. Real Madrid, clear favourites. Everyone seems to think they're going to turn Borussia Dortmund over. Do you think the same?
Yeah, I mean, Real Madrid, they've really got the knack of winning this competition. They seem to have the Midas touch when it comes to winning this. Of course, going for their 15th Champions League title, which is quite incredible when you think about it. They've put out Leipzig, Manchester City, and Bayern Munich in the knockout stages to meet here. That's quite a cast they've went through to get to this final to show that they can take on anyone.
If they can go all the way in this competition, you can't say that many past winners have had a tougher run.
Yep, it's in this competition, they won 8 and drawn 4 in the lead up to this final. That's an incredible run. Like you said, won La Liga a canter, absolutely ran away with that division against, all right, albeit the competition in Barcelona be going through their troubles this season, but they've really looked the whole package this season, and to top it off with a Champions League title would be something incredible for them again this year. I
think the most important part of this whole team, you've got some incredible players, your Jude Bellinghams, but the most important part of this team for me, Carlo Ancelotti. This man is a serial Champions League winner.
Yeah. I mean, he is someone who knows how to win this competition. He's someone who has been all over this competition for many years, and he was actually speaking this week about how he stays motivated to keep on in this tournament. This is him talking about how he has managed to stay motivated in this competition over the years. I've felt the greatest emotions in this competition, my greatest positive emotions, as well as my greatest negative emotions. I can't forget the 1984 final we lost against Liverpool when I was at Roma, and all the other final we lost against Liverpool in 2005 when he was, of course, manager of AC Milan. But there are also many positive memories. Passion certainly prevails, and that's what keeps me going. And I think if he were to prevail again on Saturday night, he certainly goes down already. He's already got the moniker of most successful manager in this competition, but he becomes a legend of the Champions League by winning another one.
We talk about it with players quite a lot. The greatest of all time, the GOAT of football, Carlo Ancelotti. He's got to be up there. You know what I mean? There's not many others. You think of the names that come to mind, Pep Guardiola, Sir Alex Ferguson, but he dismantled Pep Guardiola in an earlier round, and I think the big question for him is who he starts, who he plays, and the tactical setup he goes against Borussia Dortmund.
It's interesting talking about Ancelotti and the way he's evolved as a manager over the years. I know there was a great story about when he was back at Juventus and he had Zinedine Zidane, and he was very much in a case of, okay, now I have this great player, I have to figure out a way to use him, because he was just so good that he didn't simply fit into his 4-4-2 rigid system that he'd learned under Arrigo Sacchi back in the early 90s with Milan. He had to find somewhere to fit Zidane in, and I think he's found this way. He's taken this across his whole career, the way he talks about Vinicius Junior, who he described once in an interview in Italy as having a scooter under his feet. He's just so quick up front that he thought, okay, these guys are too good, that they don't have to fit my system, I have to fit them. And I think that's why he is so important in a team like Real Madrid. And there's a lot of big names, potentially a lot of big egos, and he really is the best at fitting them all in. And it'll be really interesting to see how he sets up on Saturday night. Will he go with Vinicius Junior and Rodrigo as that front two and have Jude Bellingham in almost like this floating number 10 role, just sitting in behind them? Or will he play Joselu, the man who was the hero of the semi-final with those 2 goals?
It's interesting what you said there, like the importance of keeping a squad together. You think of a manager like Carlo Ancelotti, he's done so much in the game, and it could be quite easy for managers like, you see in the past, Jose Mourinho, for example, kind of players aren't happy with the treatment, but you look at him and he's like dancing with the players after they win the game. They're all happy when they won the league last season, and you just feel that there's been a big kind of a family at Real Madrid, and it's working for them, as you can see, year after year.
Yep, and he also does have the blessing to be surrounded by some really experienced players, really seasoned operators in the Champions League. He's got Luka Modric and Dani Carvajal, who could be the first 2 players since Paco Gento at Real Madrid to win the Champions League 6 times. As a player, is quite incredible, even for someone of Luka Modric and Dani Carvajal's status.
Yeah, so Real Madrid, they've arrived in London, heading in to that Wembley final. We have someone there from PLZ Soccer ourselves. Peter Martin is live at Wembley. Hello, Peter. How is the mood around Wembley at the moment? Is the buzz starting to kick in?
Slowly but surely, the Real Madrid and the Borussia Dortmund fans are heading here to the Wembley walkway. It's getting exciting. There's a lot of them on the train. There's a lot of people coming into the city now. They'll make it their weekend away. Some of them with high hopes of witnessing Real Madrid's 15th Champions League win, guys, which is absolutely incredible. You have to go back to the start of the tournament where Real Madrid won the inaugural Champions League. It was the European Cup then, back in 1956. And here they are, some, 68 years later, looking for their 15th. It's incredible. Borussia Dortmund, on the other hand, are looking for their second win in this competition. They lost back in 2013 to Bayern Munich, but they'll be hoping they can replicate the achievements of that great Dortmund side that defeated Juventus back in 96-97 with a certain Paul Lambert in the lineup. So it's shaping up now with the fans adding the colour, coming to the Wembley Way just to get a little feel. But by tomorrow, around about this time, it'll be hectic.
Peter, there has been a lot of talk this week and who could be the key men to define this final. Jude Bellingham, of course, coming up against his English compatriot Jadon Sancho. But could it be a night for the veterans? Luka Modric, of course, going for his 6th Champions League title to draw level with Paco Gento, as well as Marco Reus in his final game for Borussia Dortmund. Could either of those two swing the tie?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned those players because everybody's talking about the experienced players really that could contribute. Plus, of course, that little sprinkling of gold dust that we have in Jude Bellingham. Bellingham, of course, was a star for Borussia Dortmund. I think he scored something like 24 goals in 132 games for Dortmund. Now, in his first season, I think it's 23 and 40 for Real Madrid. So the man who's wearing the number 5 certainly is not feeling the pressure of wearing that great number that Zinedine Zidane once wore. He's been a star for them. And that, by the way, is including some injuries that he's had throughout the season. But I know that a number of the experienced players have really taken to him. Luka Modric, you mentioned there, they love what Jude Bellingham does on the park and in training as well. And I think he's received a lot of plaudits from the experienced players. You rightly pointed out Modric. It's incredible. Luka Modric could be in line for that 6th Champions League win, along with Paco Gento, and obviously Dani Carvajal as well could win his 6th. There's so many different subplots here. The redemption of Jadon Sancho, who's left Manchester United behind, gone back to Dortmund for the second time. He was saying in the press, in the interviews yesterday, that he just feels as if he's blessed. He's in the Champions League final with Borussia Dortmund. All that fallout with Ten Hag is well and truly behind him. And he's back to the Jadon Sancho that everybody knows. So there's that plot. Who are the key players? Bellingham's one. The other one, of course, is Marco Reus, because this is, after 12 years, the end of his career at Borussia Dortmund. He's hoping to go out on a high. He's a legend among the Dortmund fans because, you only have to look at his record. I think he scored 170 goals in 428 games, and he's had 131 assists as well. That just gives you an indication of the complete player that he is. So I've given you all these subplots to the players that could make an impression. I have a feeling that if Real Madrid need it, then the genius that is Luka Modric will come off the bench at some point. But it's an interesting one because Edin Terzic has to try and come up with a plan to stop the greatest manager in European football for me in Carlo Ancelotti. This is him now going for what would be his 5th Champions League win as manager. And let's not forget, he won 2 as a player in that fantastic AC Milan side back in the late 80s. I think he won it twice with them. So he is the magician. He is the man who knows how to get the best out of his players. Dortmund have to come up with a plan, have to try and upset the red-hot favourites, which is Real Madrid.
Peter, the bookies have Real Madrid as the clear favourites in this one. Odds of up to 4-1 for Borussia Dortmund to win the tie. Do you think it will be as simple as that? And I'll push you for a score prediction for this one.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I hope it's not like the last four Champions League finals, because that ended 1-0. I want to see goals. I think we'll get goals because these two sides, Carlo Ancelotti, when you look at the teams that they've managed to defeat, Man City on penalties, Bayern Munich as well, the calibre of the teams that they've managed to come up against and get past, and they've scored crucial goals. You can never write Real Madrid off because they've got goals from everywhere. We mentioned Bellingham. Let's not forget Vinicius Junior, who's been an absolute star this season as well. So it could be a Toni Kroos. Let's not forget, if Real Madrid win, Toni Kroos will have his fifth Champions League medal as well. This will be his last game, and he's going to bow out of international football at the European Championships. If you're pushing me here, I think we'll get goals. Borussia Dortmund, when you look that they managed to knock out PSV, they knocked out PSG, and Atletico Madrid into the bargain, they'll fancy themselves on the counter-attack to try and maybe catch Real Madrid out. It's an intriguing one with the formations, with the manager, with the players, and of course the spectacle of 90,000 fans. And I have to tell you guys, a few prawn sandwich fans in there. But nevertheless, the real supporters, the Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund fans that will fill this stadium, will be hoping that they'll be getting their hands on the trophy either for the second time or indeed the 15th. I can't see past Real Madrid. I think they'll win. I think they might win 3-1. I'm hoping for 4 goals and an absolutely fantastic Champions League afternoon or evening at Wembley Stadium. It's going to be a great spectacle. I'm looking forward to it. I was going to say I wish, Patrick, you and Blair were with me, but, why spoil a good weekend in London with you two by my side?
Peter, you're certainly not one of those prawn sandwich brigade. You're there doing quite good work for PLZ. Just one a little bit out of left field. The last final and the major European final that happened at Wembley was obviously the Euros. There's been a lot of talk this week about beefed up security. Is that something you've noticed around about the stadium footprint being there?
Yeah, I've noticed it in the train station as well. There are tracker dogs. There are a number of police with machine guns. You can see them scouring the place and just checking that everybody is, obeying the law. There's been nothing that I don't think the Champions League final will have any problems. That people are here to enjoy themselves from Germany and Spain. But nevertheless, I'll tell you, you can't get near the stadium at the moment. That's in lockdown, so there's not really any chance to get right up close to maybe even the Bobby Moore statue. The only area I was able to get close to was the accreditation centre over on the far side there, just next to Wembley. But other than that, by tomorrow, they'll all be going into the purple, the yellow and the green zones there. They'll have their tickets. I don't think you'll be able to get a ticket for love nor money now, although I can tell you guys that Hugh McDonald this morning managed to get a ticket. He's going right now to his hotel. I'm meeting up with him and his son. So he'll be in that Borussia Dortmund end with, of course, his Borussia Dortmund tracksuit with some tomato sauce just spilled down the left-hand side because, as you know, that's what Hugh does.
Oh, Peter, well, I hope you and Hugh enjoy the game and you get a cracker at Wembley. Thank you for joining us on the European show.
Thanks, guys.
Well, as Peter said, Dortmund, they're not the favourites, they're the underdogs. I don't think many people would expect them to have been in the final, but they're there and they have the chance. They're one step away from that Champions League trophy.
Yeah, I think even the most optimistic of Dortmund fans could never have seen them making it into the final this year, especially when you compare it. 5th in the Bundesliga, their form has been night and day in the Champions League compared to the league form. They've knocked out PSV, Atletico Madrid and PSG to get to this stage. That PSG result specifically really set a marker down that they were here to do something in this competition. And like you said, they've got to the final, they're there now, anything can happen.
I think we've said it week after week. Every single European show we've gone, they took on PSV, Atletico Madrid, PSG, as you said. I think every week we said, I'm not confident. I don't think anyone is confident. I think even now, you've probably written them off. You think, I think Real Madrid will go once again. But they just seem to keep on doing it. And I think there's a big chance that they could maybe cause an upset.
Well, to get some expert Dortmund opinion, I spoke this week with Scottish football writer and Dortmund aficionado Graeme Macpherson. Who really would be the key men for you on both sides that could define where this final goes?
I think from Dortmund's point of view, you'd be looking to Jadon Sancho. He's been a guy, rejuvenated since leaving Manchester United to come back to Dortmund. He was a huge fans' favourite the first time he was at the Westfalen. he's come back, and people say, maybe you shouldn't go back to your former club, but he's really hit it off again. And if they can get the ball wide to him and get him running at defenders and turning, then I think he could be a kind of key player for them. And I guess maybe predictable to say, but Vinicius, I guess the guy you look to for Madrid, he'll be up against probably Julian Ryerson, who's been a good defender for Dortmund, but hasn't really been tested at this level. So again, I think if Madrid will be looking to get Vinicius on the ball as often as they can to test Ryerson, to see if they can maybe draw him into a couple of rash tackles early on and see how he copes with that. So I think it'll be those two guys, the two white guys, who could maybe define the final for one of these teams.
How big of an impact do you think the Jude Bellingham factor is going to have for Real Madrid? Obviously, going back to face his former club, he spoke after that semi-final about how it was almost like fated that he was coming up against Dortmund again. Do you think that will have a big effect in the game?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, he left Birmingham as a boy and he went to Dortmund, and he left as a man to go to Madrid. I think he was maybe only 17 or 18 when he joined up with Dortmund, and those 2 years were really special in his development. We saw him come on from a guy who had potential to become really a kind of really influential figure, one of the leading players in world football, a full England international. And since then, he's gone on to Madrid and he's really kicked on again. I think we're talking about a talent that will be one of the best players for the next decade and beyond. So there is obviously that emotional angle. I think he would rather have not been up against Dortmund in a final like this, but I think Dortmund will have to really kind of keep a close eye on him. Guys like, Emre Can, Julian Brandt are going to have to really mark him closely, because if Bellingham gets this sort of strutty stuff and have his say, then he could really dominate this final as well.
And finally, Graeme, just before you go, what's your score predictions for Saturday night?
My head probably says a Madrid win, but I'm going down there to join the BVB fans, so I'm going to say 2-1 to Dortmund.
Some excellent insight from Graeme there, and you can watch that full interview now on the PLZ Soccer YouTube channel. An interesting point that he brings up with who might be the match winner for Dortmund, Jadon Sancho. It really has been billed as these two English players coming back to the home of English football. Jadon Sancho gone off the boil at Manchester United, not really lived up to what his potential was. Jude Bellingham on the complete opposite trajectory, on his way up to the very top superstardom. Who comes out on top between those two?
You look at Jadon Sancho, I feel like he's going to go into this game with something to prove. He's got a little chip on his shoulder. Obviously it hasn't worked out at Manchester United as of yet, but in the most recent weeks, missing out on that England European squad, people saying it's just a little bit too late for Jadon Sancho, but I think Jude Bellingham, he's been incredible for club and country all season, and I can just see him popping up with a goal against his old club to deny them. Just the big question is, would he celebrate?
Yeah, I think in a Champions League final you've got to celebrate no matter what the club has done for you. And definitely, I think Jadon Sancho, he has all the ability to go and win that game and go and make it his own if it so pans out that way. Some interesting subplots for this Dortmund team leading into this final, not least Mats Hummels as one of them. He's come out with some very interesting, to say the least, quotes this week leading up to the game. Here's him talking about coach Edin Terzic and Borussia Dortmund's season so far. He says, "I was furious because of the opinion that Borussia Dortmund shouldn't play like that against any opponent in the world. I didn't think it could go on like this. I felt insulted in my honour to stand on that pitch in that kit, so submissive, so inferior in footballing terms." And he goes on to talk about how he was really one of the catalysts to go in to speak to the manager around about the winter break to say this wasn't good enough for Borussia Dortmund. But the timing of this comment seems unbelievable in the week leading up to a Champions League final.
You think everything would be positive. The media guys have got to be coming out and saying, let's get the fans up for this. You don't want it to seem like there's a divide in the camp, or even if there is a divide in the camp, you don't want it to be affecting the build-up. This is, for many of those players, the biggest games they've ever played in, and you just want the team to be up and ready to go.
Yeah, really, really strange comments from Mats Hummels. He is a player, though, that's been really integral to this Champions League run. He was a colossus in the semi-final against PSG, and he hasn't missed a minute of action in the competition this season. He could become the first outfield player to win the tournament, having not missed a minute, since Cristiano Ronaldo in 2017-18. And also, a fun fact for you here, he could become the first centre-back to win the competition, having played every minute since Sami Hyypiä for Liverpool in 2005.
I was three when that happened. I'm not gonna pretend I know a lot about the football that Sami Hyypiä, probably just by his reputation from what I've heard. But
a legend of the game.
Yeah, okay, I'll take your word for it. But Hummels, back to him. He's been unbelievable this year. So many important goals, which you wouldn't really think of a central defender, but him in the box, in the corners, getting up strong headers, and he's been very deserving of those Man of the Match awards he's picked up on multiple occasions.
Yeah, definitely. He's been such a key player for Borussia Dortmund, not just in this season, but over so many seasons, along with his mate at Borussia Dortmund and one of his teammates over many years, Marco Reus. Marco Reus, who will play his last game for Borussia Dortmund at the weekend. And just a little marker of their longevity in this Dortmund team. If we take a look at the starting 11 back from 2013 when they last played in the Champions League final at Wembley. You look at that team there: Weidenfeller, Lucas Piszczek, Subotic, Mats Hummels still at the centre back, Schmelzer, Sven Bender, Ilkay Gundogan, Kuba Blaszczykowski, Marco Reus in there at number 10, Kevin Grosskreutz and Robert Lewandowski. A few of those players still playing today, but two of those players still in that Dortmund team. And what a fantastic send-off it would be this time for Marco Reus. After suffering heartbreak at Wembley last time at the hands of Bayern, could he go this season and go one better?
There's so many heartbreaks for Marco Reus. You just think, could he do it? Could this be the day? You see him lifting it up on the steps of Wembley, and then he retires. He would go down as a Borussia Dortmund legend. The amount of chances he had to leave the club. PSG were interested in him. Bayern Munich were interested in him throughout his time at Borussia Dortmund. He said, no, I'm sticking with this club, and he could lead them to the ultimate glory at the end.
I think that would be an incredible narrative that even the most die-hard of Real Madrid fans, you would have to say it would be unbelievable to see happen, to see Marco Reus lift that trophy on his very final appearance for Borussia Dortmund. But finally, we get to the most important part of the show, and where me make a mess of it so everyone can comment online and tell us how we don't know anything about football. What are your predictions for the final?
I've been thinking about this one, right? And we've got a few wrong throughout the season, but this one, I'm confident. Borussia Dortmund 2, Real Madrid 1.
Wow.
Right? Borussia Dortmund, they're going to do it. Marco Reus is going to lift the trophy, and Borussia Dortmund are going to win their second Champions League.
See, that's very funny, and to fly in the face of all logic, I also think Borussia Dortmund might win this. I'm not quite bold enough to give you a score prediction. I don't think. I think it may be 1-1 in go into the extra time, and I think Dortmund will win it on penalties. I think that's the way it'll go.
Tension.
And I think Dortmund lifting that trophy at Wembley will be something special.
Well, it kicks off Saturday evening, and you can come back onto the PLZ Soccer account to show us how wrong we were in these predictions. That's it from us on the European show this season. We'll be back next year with much more content for you. But if you've enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel, and we'll be back next season. For myself and Blair, thank you